The world of theatrical arts and deafness have had a strong and long-lasting relationship dating all the way back to the 1860s, when theater was often used in deaf schools as a means of visual education. It wasn't until 1967, however, when the National Theatre of the Deaf, a touring theater company that employs deaf and hearing actors alike, was founded. The NTD has performed in all 50 states, on television, and in 33 different countries, and combines both ASL and spoken word to create productions that are accessible for all types of people. The idea for the founding of this specific theater company was born from a Broadway production written about the life and experiences of notable deaf and blind figure Helen Keller, called The Miracle Worker. The lighting designer for said production, David Hayes, was determined to create a place for ASL as a valid form of performance art and worked extremely hard to find funding for and eventually open the National Theatre of the Deaf. The NTD has inspired the opening of countless other deaf theater companies across the U.S., making deaf theater a prominent part of the industry as a whole. The NTD has pioneered the acceptance of using ASL both on stage and off, especially through employing interpreters to make even spoken productions more accessible. One of the most notable deaf productions of all time was theater company Deaf West's production of Spring Awakening. Spring Awakening was not originally written to be performed in ASL and had already reached Broadway audiences with its progressive storyline before this production was even an idea in Deaf West's minds. The sheer emotional impact of this production, however, made it a great platform to inspire change for theatrical accessibility as well. Deaf West's production employed the use of sign language as well as simultaneous English translation to be friendly to both deaf and hearing patrons. This production, after a test run in Los Angeles, was moved to Broadway in New York City. This brought sign language-based theater to the biggest theatrical platform in the world. The show cast deaf and hearing actors alike, as well as musicians and technicians of all abilities. This was a huge step forward for inclusive theater and has since begun to inspire other productions to be more conscious in their casting and hiring processes.
People are beginning to put an increasing number of deaf characters and actors in films. However, they are often poorly represented. Movies in general rely heavily on soundtracks, including music and auditory special effects. Hearing music, engines roaring, crickets chirping are used to enhance the moviegoer's experience. Well, the hearing moviegoer's experience. Closed caption has helped, but has not been enough. This is now changing. All digital movies must now comply with a new federal rule under the Americans with Disabilities Act. This requires closed caption. Movies with deaf characters and actors are also increasing. The overall awareness and sensitivity to people with disabilities have increased. This is evident in the recent book, then movie, Wonderstruck. One of the stars of the movie is Millie Simmons, who is deaf. Her character is a deaf girl in 1927 New York. Wonderstruck is a movie that focuses primarily on visual storytelling. Millie was also cast in The Quiet Place, which was a huge box office success. This movie was a seat-gripping horror movie that did not rely on sound, but instead the story and characters. She will be reprising her role in the sequel and was nominated for the Critics' Choice Award for Best Young Actor/Actress. This is a huge hurdle for the deaf community, being recognized and valued as an equal contributors to the arts. In a New York Times article, it stated that the movie has cast a new spotlight on the hurdles facing deaf audiences, performers, and storytellers in filmmaking, which trails well beyond TV and streaming in every aspect of deaf experience. With more and more movies coming out with deaf actors and actresses, deaf people are finally getting their foot into mainstream Hollywood. When watching a movie, hearing people often cannot tell if the actor or actress is actually deaf in real life, or if they are simply playing a deaf character. This is not the case with the deaf. Some people may think that Ruby Rose is deaf after watching her portrayal as the villain Ares in John Wick Chapter 2. However, she is not even hard of hearing. For the hearing viewers, all they see is the hand movement or signing, and they assume that that is all there is. However, American Sign Language requires the entire body to talk and tell a story. Todd Haynes, the director of Wonderstruck, walked around New York City with noise-canceling headphones. He did this to catch a glimpse of what it would be like to walk in the shoes of someone who is deaf, even though it comes nowhere compared to the whole experience. After his experience, he said that This was a thumbnail version of Anything Close to Life. It's great to see that this director went through this to make the film more authentic portrayal of a deaf or hearing impaired person and came out of the experience with a newfound respect.
One of the most popular forms of media and entertainment in the deaf community is DPAN, or the Deaf Professional Arts Network. Founded in 2006 by musicians Sean Forbes and Joel Martin, DPAN is a world-renowned nonprofit organization whose mission was to make music and music culture universally acceptable by extending its reach into the deaf and hard of hearing communities. Following their mission, the organization has released 2 compilation DVDs, Volume 1 in 2008 and Volume 2 in 2013, titled It's Everybody's Music. These compilations include popular songs from 2008 or from the 2000s recreated through the use of sign language. Now, since its release, It's Everybody's Music Volume 1 has sold more than 10,000 copies. So this resource is used by more than just the deaf community. It is frequently accessed by interpreters, educators, and individuals learning ASL. Currently, DPAN has more than 500,000 deaf and hard of hearing fans. It is also used for more than just making music more accessible. In 2016, DPAN.TV was launched to further extend its reach by creating DTV News, which makes quality news and information accessible for deaf and hard of hearing community. This news network uses deaf anchors who deliver national news with the use of ASL. This network also incorporates captions and voiceovers, aiding to the mission of making it accessible for everyone who is watching. Though DPAN is a good tool for providing television and entertainment services to the deaf community, there is still an issue of inclusion and marketability when looking at the commercial advertisements. Companies aim their product and marketing to the majority group, which in this case is the hearing world. Now, for this, they choose to use actors who look like or have common characteristics as their target audience. So a study by Holler and Ralph analyzed the prevalence and types of disabilities shown in television advertisements. The first television advertisement to feature a deaf actor was for McDonald's in 1986, and included in the commercial were captions, but instead of having the captions be used for the deaf viewers, they were used for hearing viewers so they wouldn't get confused by what they were seeing. It was clear that the corporations were not using deaf actors to raise awareness for deafness, but rather to appeal to other people with disabilities. Now, since this time, the understanding and acceptance of deaf culture has grown immensely. However, the use of people with disabilities in advertisements seems to be less about awareness and more about marketability. So upon further analysis, the disabilities being shown, such as deafness or people using wheelchairs, they still appear to look physically appealing. So it is very rare, if ever at all, that a popular company chooses to use someone with a more severe disability, such as cerebral palsy, to make an advertisement. All this is not to say that the deaf community is completely non-existent from commercials. Various companies such as Verizon, Pepsi, and Kay Jewelers have created advertisements with deaf actors, and more are beginning to appear, but slowly over time. Though the inclusion of deaf culture has started to become more visible in television and movies, there is still plenty of room for improvement in the commercial marketing industry. Now, aside from the visual portrayals of the deaf community, there is also an issue relating to the reception and understanding of typical commercials being viewed by the deaf. Though commercials run regularly, deaf viewers may find it difficult to understand the corporate name, the message, the product being sold, or its uses. So a pilot study conducted by Nyarko and Apongs Asante in 2015 worked to determine how well the deaf community in Ghana received visual messages through television commercials, as well as what could be done to increase comprehension. So with the increased understanding of deafness and its surrounding community, subtitles and closed captioning has become increasingly more common in movies, but the same cannot be said for television, however. At times that there are captions, there is either a visual delay between what is being shown on the screen and the words following, or the caption may change too quickly for those reading them. The challenge becomes even harder when a commercial includes song, since the use of facial expression is very subjective, yet also an integral part of sign language, so this may make the intended message very unclear. So the result of the study showed that the inclusion of sign language in corporate commercials led to an increase in all tested areas, such as naming corporations, understanding the product and its uses, across the board for all the participants. Mainstream change such as this would take time and patience, but would be extremely beneficial for consumers everywhere. So if businesses choose to widen their target audience, they can create unity between the deaf and hearing communities.
Another area where deaf culture is exemplified is within the world of visual fine arts. Many different mediums are included in visual fine arts, such as painting, drawing, sculpture, metalwork, and ceramics. When looking at the connection between deaf culture and visual arts, there are two important terms to note: deaf art and devia. Deaf art can be described as any piece of art that is made by a deaf or hard of hearing person. For example, Rachel Hubler is a deaf ceramic artist, but her work is not directly about her experience as a deaf individual. In 1989, another term came into play which focuses on art that is about the deaf experience specifically. The term devia, which stands for deaf view/image art, was created by 9 deaf artists to distinguish a genre that is exclusively for art about deaf culture and the deaf experience. Looking into devia is an important step to learn more about how deaf culture can be expressed. One subset of devia is known as resistance devia. This art is used to challenge social justice issues that face the deaf community. For example, a common theme within resistance devia is the lack of language access for many young deaf people. Deaf people are often not taught sign language at a young age. Instead, they are expected to assimilate to the hearing world by speaking English and learning to lip read. One devia artist named Betty G. Miller uses her work to express her frustration with the restrictions against American Sign Language. In her famous resistance devia painting, titled Ameslan Prohibited, she showcases a hand that is shackled with the fingertips cut off. This piece showcases how damaging it can feel when deaf people have their language withheld from them. Resistance devia can be seen as very political, but it is not meant to be just seen as angry art. Instead, resistance devia is meant to invoke change within the deaf community and the larger community as a whole. Affirmation devia is the name of another subset of deaf view/image art. While resistance devia works to dismantle injustices that are facing the deaf community, affirmation devia instead celebrates deaf culture. Themes within this style of art include acceptance and empowerment of ASL and deafhood. Chuck Baird is a devia artist, and in his piece titled Sunrise, he includes the ASL sign for sunrise within his landscape piece. Even though there are 2 subsets of devia art, they are not always mutually exclusive. For example, an artist could include both themes of resistance and affirmation within their piece. Art that includes both themes can be seen as liberation art, because it celebrates the beauty of deaf culture while still bringing light to the struggles that deaf people face every day. A devia artist named Nancy Rourke is known for her liberation art. In her piece titled ASL First, she incorporates sign language elements typical in affirmation art, while including an underlying resistance message that ASL should be the first language taught to deaf children, regardless of if they are raised in a hearing or deaf family. As artists evolve and express themselves in new ways, there will likely continue to be new ways that deaf culture can be conveyed through the visual arts.